You are going to fall. Not might, not possibly, not as a worst-case scenario that disciplined and prepared people manage to avoid. You are going to fall. More than once, more than twice, in ways you anticipated and in ways you never saw coming. In areas where you felt certain and in areas where you thought you were protected. In moments when everyone is watching and in moments when you are entirely alone. This is not a warning. This is the most honest and ultimately the most liberating truth about the nature of building a meaningful life. Because the question was never going to be whether you fall. The question has always been what happens after. What you do in the space between the ground and the standing. What you carry with you when you rise. Whether the version of you that gets back up is smaller than the one that fell, or whether it is somehow, through some alchemy that only difficulty produces, larger. That alchemy is what I want to talk about today. Not the falling, the rising. The specific, complicated, often painful, ultimately extraordinary process of rising from the falls that life delivers. And not just rising stronger. Not in spite of the fall, but because of it. Not restored to who you were before, but rebuilt into someone the fall could not have produced any other way. This is the conversation that most people are not having, because most conversations about failure are about how to avoid it, how to minimize the risk, how to prepare so thoroughly that the fall either never comes or lands as softly as possible. And those conversations have their value, but they leave out the most important part, what you do when it happens anyway. And it will happen anyway, because the things worth building require the level of commitment and risk that makes falling an inevitable companion to the pursuit. Because the life worth living demands the kind of vulnerability to loss that guarantees you will experience loss. Because the person worth becoming can only be shaped through the specific pressures that failure and difficulty and loss apply to the raw material of who you currently are. The falling is not the problem. The falling is part of the process of becoming someone strong enough to build what you are trying to build, someone resilient enough to sustain the effort that your goals require, someone deep enough to carry the life you are working toward. And rising stronger every time you fall is not a metaphor. It is a description of a real mechanism, a physiological and psychological reality of how human beings are designed to work when they engage with their falls honestly and extract from them what falls are designed to produce. That mechanism, that real, available, you have access to it right now mechanism of rising stronger, that is what we are exploring today. Extract the lesson from every fall, every time. Before you rise, take the information the fall is offering. Ask the honest questions. What did I misunderstand? What did I underestimate? What was I unwilling to see before the fall made it unavoidable? What do I know now that I did not know then? These questions, asked and answered honestly, convert the experience of falling from pure loss into a net gain. The loss was real. The fall cost something, but the information gained is worth something too. And the person who accounts honestly for both is the person who rises genuinely richer than they fell. The second thing the fall is teaching you is about your character, specifically about the distance between the character you believe you have and the character you actually have under genuine pressure. Most people discover significant things about themselves through falls that they could not have discovered any other way. The patience they thought they had and do not. The resilience they believed they possessed and did not. The values they thought were non-negotiable and that, under genuine pressure, they found were more negotiable than they had known. This self-knowledge is uncomfortable. It often requires revising a self-concept that was built on an overly favorable assessment of who you are when things are difficult. But it is among the most important knowledge available to any person who wants to genuinely grow rather than just successfully maintain the performance of growth. The fall reveals the actual you, not the presented version, not the version you described when things were going well, the actual you under genuine pressure, the you that exists when the support structures are removed and the outcome is uncertain and the cost of continuing is genuinely high. Getting to know that version of yourself honestly is one of the most significant gifts that falling can offer, because the actual you is the material you have to work with, and you cannot effectively develop material you have not honestly assessed. Know yourself through the fall, not just the comfortable parts, the parts that the fall reveals, and use that knowledge to build more accurately in the rising. Now I want to talk about something that I think is the most misunderstood element of the rise, the thing that most people get wrong about what rising stronger actually requires. Most people think that rising stronger means returning to where you were before the fall. It does not. Returning to where you were before the fall is just recovery. It is restoration, getting back the thing that was lost and resuming from roughly the same position. And recovery is not nothing. Recovery matters. The ability to recover from falls is itself a valuable and developed quality. But rising stronger is different from recovering. Rising stronger means arriving after the fall at a position that is genuinely different from the position you were in before it. Not just restored, advanced. Not just back, further. In possession of something, understanding, capacity, character, skill, wisdom that the fall produced and that the pre-fall version did not have. This is the alchemy. The conversion of the fall into something that builds rather than just depletes. And it is not automatic. It requires the specific work of extraction and integration that turns the experience of falling from pure loss into a building material. What are the building materials that falls produce? The first is demonstrated resilience, the lived experience of having fallen and risen. Every time you rise from a fall, you add to the internal evidence that you can survive falls, that they are survivable, that the thing you were afraid of, the thing that the fear of failure was warning you about, happened, and you are still here, still capable, still building. And that evidence changes your relationship with the next risk, with the next attempt, with the next step forward that carries the possibility of another fall. You are less afraid of falling the second time than the first, less afraid the fifth time than the second, not because the falls stop hurting, because you have accumulated evidence that you survive them. This is the specific mechanism of rising stronger. Each fall that is genuinely survived builds the experiential database that makes the next attempt braver than the last. Not reckless, braver. Informed by the evidence that falling is not fatal and that rising is possible, and the strength required to do it is available because it has been demonstrated before. The second building material is clarity, the specific kind of clarity that only genuine loss produces. When something falls away, when the direction you were pursuing proves to be something other than what you needed, the loss reveals something about the value you placed on it, about whether the thing you lost was genuinely what you wanted, or whether it was the version of what you wanted that felt safe to pursue. Some falls reveal that what you were building was not actually aligned with what you most deeply value, that the goal you were pursuing was chosen more for its social legibility than for its genuine alignment with who you are and what you are for. This kind of revelation is painful in the short term, but it is liberating in the longer term, because it frees you from the continued investment in a direction that was not actually yours. Some of the most significant redirections in human lives come from falls that looked like endings and were actually clarifications. The business that failed and revealed that the person's real passion was somewhere else entirely. The path that collapsed and opened the space for the kind of direction that the previous one was preventing. The fall as clarification, the loss as opening, the ending as the beginning of the more honest direction. The third building material is depth, the specific kind of depth that only difficulty creates. The depth of a person who has been genuinely tested, who has faced something real and hard, and who has come through it with their fundamental commitment to building intact, even if everything else was changed. This depth changes everything about how a person shows up, in their work, in their relationships, in their own internal experience of being alive. The person of depth is more real, more present to the full range of human experience, more capable of genuine empathy because they have been in the place of genuine difficulty, more patient with the process because they understand from experience that it does not move in straight lines. Depth is not given, it is made, through the specific experience of having fallen and having risen and having done both honestly. Falls build depth, every time, for the person who is willing to go through them honestly. Now I want to talk about something that I think is the most misunderstood element of the rise, the thing that most people get wrong about what rising stronger actually requires. Most people think that rising stronger means returning to where you were before the fall. It does not. Returning to where you were before the fall is just recovery. It is restoration, getting back the thing that was lost and resuming from roughly the same position. And recovery is not nothing. Recovery matters. The ability to recover from falls is itself a valuable and developed quality. But rising stronger is different from recovering. Rising stronger means arriving after the fall at a position that is genuinely different from the position you were in before it. Not just restored, advanced. Not just back, further. In possession of something, understanding, capacity, character, skill, wisdom that the fall produced and that the pre-fall version did not have. This is the alchemy. The conversion of the fall into something that builds rather than just depletes. And it is not automatic. It requires the specific work of extraction and integration that turns the experience of falling from pure loss into a building material.
This stage matters more than most people give it credit for. The quality of the thinking and the decisions and the processing that will eventually lead to genuine rising, all of it is supported or undermined by the physical state of the person doing it. Stabilize first, before the analysis, before the planning. Get the physical fundamentals right. Give the system the basic inputs it needs to function at the level the next stage requires. The second stage is processing. The period of genuine, honest engagement with the experience of having fallen, the questions asked and answered, the lessons extracted, the self-knowledge gathered, the honest accounting of what the fall revealed about the situation and about yourself. This stage should not be rushed. It should also not be extended indefinitely. There is a specific amount of genuine processing that a fall requires, not more and not less. The minimum processing leaves gaps in the understanding that will create problems in the next attempt. The maximum processing becomes a form of avoidance, staying in the processing stage as a way of not taking the first step of the rising stage. Find the genuine completion of the processing, the point at which the questions have been answered and the lessons have been extracted and the honest accounting is done, and then move. The third stage is reorientation, the period of deciding what the rising looks like, not rushing back to the exact same direction as before the fall, genuinely, honestly, without the pressure of external expectations, determining what direction the next chapter takes. This stage requires the clarity that the processing stage produces, and it often requires more time than feels comfortable externally, because the world tends to reward visible movement over genuine reorientation, because people around you will want to see you moving again before you have finished figuring out where you are going. Resist that pressure. Take the time the reorientation requires. The next direction is more important than the speed at which you move in it. The fourth stage is the first step, the moment when the direction has been determined and the processing is complete and the stabilization is solid enough to support forward movement, the moment when the rise begins. The first step does not have to be large. It should not be large. The first step of the rise is the minimum viable movement in the direction of the next attempt, the smallest possible action that is genuinely in the right direction, that demonstrates to yourself that the rising has begun. That step is everything, not because of what it produces externally, because of what it confirms internally. The confirmation that you are someone who rises, who does not stay on the ground indefinitely, who moves again when the time is right. Take that step, and then take the next one, and the next. Let the rising build from the first step. Let me talk now about the role of other people in the rising, because rising is not a solo activity. The mythology of the independently resilient person who rises from every fall through their own internal resources alone is exactly that, a mythology. The reality of human resilience is relational. It is built and sustained through connection with other human beings who are genuinely present for the experience of the fall and the process of the rise. Not everyone, the right people, the ones whose presence is genuine rather than performative, the ones who are there for the fall as well as the rise. These people provide perspective, the perspective of someone who can see you from outside the fall, whose assessment of the situation and of your capacity to navigate it is more accurate than yours in the immediate aftermath. They provide continuity, the reminder when the fall has contracted your sense of what is possible, of who you were before it happened, of what you have built before this, of the evidence that exists in the full span of your history that this fall is an event in a story rather than the end of one. And they provide the irreplaceable gift of being witnessed, of having the experience of the fall acknowledged by someone outside of yourself, of not carrying the weight of it entirely alone. Let people in, the right people. Those people are not a luxury in the navigation of genuine difficulty. They are a resource that the private solo version of resilience simply cannot replicate. Now let me speak to something that I know is present for some people who are hearing this while in the middle of a fall, not before one or after one, but actively inside one, when the ground is still close and the standing feels distant. What you are experiencing right now is not permanent. The contracted sense of possibility that a fall produces, the sense that the world is smaller than it was, that your options are fewer, that sense is a feature of the acute phase of loss processing. It is not an accurate picture of reality. It is the nervous system in its threat-activated state, doing its job of concentrating your attention on the immediate difficulty. It will pass, not on a fixed timeline, but it will shift.
The perspective will widen. The options that are invisible right now will become visible again as the acute phase passes and the processing produces the clarity it is designed to produce. Your job right now is not to have the full picture. It is to take the next available step, just the next one, the stabilization step, the one that is available right now, the water, the food, the sleep, the phone call to the person who is safe to be honest with. Just the next step, not the whole rise, just the next step. You will rise, not because I am telling you that you will, because the mechanism is real, because the capacity to rise is built into the same human architecture that produces the fall, because the strength that the rising requires is developed precisely in the experience of the falling and the surviving of it. You have what the rising requires, not all of it right now, enough for the next step right now, and enough for the step after that when you get there. That is all you need. Now, let me bring this entire conversation to where it needs to end, not with a list or a summary, with the thing I most want to leave you with. The falls are not interruptions to your story. They are chapters of it, essential chapters, the chapters in which the most important development happens, in which the character is forged that could not have been forged in the easier chapters, in which the depth that is built that the shallower chapters could not produce, in which the specific knowledge that only genuine difficulty provides becomes permanently yours. The version of you that exists after a genuine fall and genuine rise is not a repaired version of the one who fell. It is a more complete version, a version that has been through something real and that carries the specific knowledge and character and depth that the real thing produces, a version that the pre-fall you could not have become through any path that did not pass through the fall. This does not make the falls good in themselves. They are not. Loss is real. Difficulty is real. The cost of falling is real and should not be minimized. But the rising stronger is also real. The alchemy is genuine. The mechanism works. Every time you fall and rise honestly, something in you that was not there before the fall is there after it. Something that compounds with every subsequent fall and rise into a kind of strength that the person who never fell cannot manufacture. That is the story you are building, not despite the falls, including them, especially including them. So rise every time, stronger every time, not because the falling is easy, it is not. Not because the rising is quick, it rarely is. Because you are the kind of person who gets back up. Because the falling and the rising are both part of the same extraordinary process, and the process is producing something real in you. Something that becomes visible from the other side, but that is being built right now, in you, through every fall you survive, honestly, and every rising you make with full intention. Rise stronger, every single time. That is the whole instruction, and you already have everything the rising requires. Now use it.